At 3 in the morning, the executive elevator in Manhattan Business Tower never stopped on the 25th floor into that night. James Washington, who had worked as a night janitor for 15 years, was wiping down glass when he saw something alarming. Inside the boardroom, a woman suddenly collapsed against the massive table that was worth more than his yearly paycheck. It was Victoria Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Industries and one of the most powerful business leaders in the country. Her face twisted in pain, her left arm went limp, and when she tried to call for help, her speech was broken and slurred. James recognized the signs instantly. It was a stroke. He knew because his late wife Dorothy, a neurology nurse, had spent years teaching him medical basics during their marriage. She always said knowledge could save lives, no matter who you were. James froze for a moment. He was just the janitor, a man most executives didn't even notice. Victoria Sterling was someone who controlled billions with an email and whose photo appeared on magazine covers. Their worlds never touched, except when she walked past him without acknowledgement. But Dorothy's words echoed in his mind. Sickness doesn't care about status or skin color. James pushed open the conference room door. "Ms. Sterling, you're having a stroke. Don't try to talk, just listen," he said with calm certainty, a tone learned from watching Dorothy guide families through medical emergencies. Victoria tried to argue, but her words came out garbled. Fear filled her eyes as she realized something was terribly wrong. James quickly dialed 911, while carefully positioning her to prevent further damage. Ambulance to Manhattan Tower, 25th floor. Female, mid-40s. Stroke symptoms, facial paralysis. Weakness in left arm, slurred speech. Symptoms began about 5 minutes ago. The operator was shocked at the precise medical report from someone who called himself a janitor. But James spoke like a trained professional. When paramedics arrived, they found Victoria stabilized in the correct position, with James explaining every detail of her condition clearly. One medic whispered to another, "This guy knows more than half the nurses I work with." At the hospital, doctors began the treatment that would save Victoria's life. Meanwhile, James quietly returned to mopping floors as if nothing unusual had happened. To him, he was just the invisible janitor doing his job, while the wealthy slept peacefully. What he didn't know was that this single night would change everything for him, and for Victoria. The next morning, James expected routine work. Instead, he found a notice taped to his locker, a formal warning for inappropriate use of the executive elevator, an unauthorized access after hours. It was signed by Wilson Carter, the security manager, a man who enjoyed making others miserable. James read the paper calmly. 15 years of spotless work without a single complaint. And now he was being punished for saving the CEO's life. The irony wasn't lost on him. In the corporate world, sometimes doing the right thing became a crime when the wrong kind of person did it. What unsettled him more than the warning was the speed. How had Carter learned about last night so fast? The hospital wouldn't release information, and the paramedics had no reason to report it. That meant someone was watching Victoria closely. Later that morning, James noticed unusual activity on the 25th floor. Dr. Patterson, Victoria's personal physician, arrived hours later than normal, looking both irritated and uneasy. Through the glass doors, James spotted him in a tense argument with Wilson Carter. Dorothy's words hit him like a memory brought back to life. "Jamie, when powerful people suddenly fall ill, don't just ask why. Ask who gains if they can't keep working." Until now, James thought Victoria's stroke came from stress. But the secretive conversation between Carter and the doctor made him question everything. Skilled doctors didn't panic when patients survived, they celebrated. That afternoon, James got a call he never expected. Victoria Sterling wanted to see him in her office. When he stepped onto the 25th floor, he found her sitting at her desk, looking far stronger than the night before, though her sharp eyes carried a hint of curiosity. James, right? She asked, motioning for him to take a seat across from her. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did last night. The doctors told me your quick thinking saved my life. I just did what anyone decent would have done. Miss Sterling, James replied quietly. Victoria studied him with interest. The paramedics were impressed with your medical knowledge. Where did you learn about strokes and symptoms like that? Talking about Dorothy was never easy, but something in her tone made him feel the question was sincere. My wife was a nurse neurology specialist. 20 years at Chicago General. She taught me how to recognize emergencies. He hesitated before finishing. She died in an accident 5 years ago. Victoria's expression softened. I'm sorry, truly. She paused, then leaned forward as if weighing her next words. James, can I ask you something unusual? Do you think what happened to me was natural? The question stunned him. The most powerful woman in the building was asking a janitor for his opinion on her health. With all respect, Miss Sterling. That's a question for your doctor, James answered carefully. Her reply came fast, laced with frustration. Dr. Patterson said it was executive stress. He gave me sedatives and suggested I take a vacation. James felt a chill run through him. Dorothy had drilled it into him. Strokes in younger patients were red flags. Any skilled doctor would push for deep investigation, not hand out pills and excuses. In fact, giving sedatives after such an event wasn't just careless, it was dangerous. Mrs. Sterling, James asked gently, had you noticed anything similar before last night? Victoria hesitated, then admitted, headaches, dizziness. Sometimes I'd lose focus for no reason. Patterson told me it was just work pressure. Inside, James could almost hear Dorothy's voice screaming warnings. Those weren't stress symptoms, they were signs that demanded urgent medical tests. Either Dr. Patterson was unbelievably incompetent, or he was intentionally hiding the truth. When James left her office, Wilson Carter was standing in the hallway, waiting. He watched James with a thin smile, one that carried a warning. We know you're stepping where you don't belong. That night, as James mopped the quiet corridors, Dorothy's words echoed in his memory. Jammy. Medicine doesn't have coincidences. When strange patterns appear, someone is usually behind them. What if Victoria's stroke hadn't been natural at all? What if someone was making her sick on purpose? He thought about the warning letter in his locker. The tense argument between Carter and Patterson. The strange way both men seemed to know too much. For 15 years, James had been invisible, just the janitor. Unseen and underestimated. But now he realized invisibility could be his greatest advantage. People showed their true selves when they thought no one important was watching. Over the next 2 weeks, James perfected what he'd always been good at, blending in while quietly observing, and what he uncovered confirmed his worst fears. Dr. Patterson visited Carter's office several times a week, always carrying the same brown medical briefcase. It never left the office. One night, James left his cleaning cart near a half-open door and caught pieces of their conversation. The tests still show progressive cardiovascular damage, Patterson whispered. But I'm keeping the official reports within normal limits, like we agreed. Perfect, Carter replied smoothly. How much longer? With the medication I've been slipping in disguised as vitamins. Maybe 6 more months. Then the next episode should be final. James froze where he stood. His suspicion was right. This wasn't stress. Someone was deliberately trying to kill. Victoria Sterling. James had to steady himself against the cart to keep from falling. They weren't just neglecting Victoria's health, they were actively poisoning her. Dorothy used to say the darkest kind of crime was when someone sworn to protect lives chose instead to take them. The missing piece of the puzzle came from an unlikely source, Marcus Johnson, the air conditioning technician, 10 years younger than James. Marcus was a veteran who had served in Afghanistan, a man supporting 3 kids through contract work. On a Friday, during a shift change, he pulled James aside. Man, "You gotta hear this," Marcus whispered. "I was changing filters on the 25th floor when I overheard Carter. He was on the phone, talking about Sterling Industries. Huge amounts before some leadership changes, he said, were coming. The pieces clicked into place. Carter wasn't just a helper, he was the mastermind. If Victoria died or became too ill to continue, Carter, as head of security and a temporary board member, would step into control. With advanced knowledge of the transition, he could play the stock market and rake in millions. "Marcus," James said slowly, "do you still have people from the Army contacts who know about gathering evidence?" Marcus studied him with the sharp focus of a soldier who'd been under fire. "Depends what you need." "Why?" So James laid it all out. Over the next 2 hours, he told Marcus everything: Victoria's stroke, Patterson's complicity, Carter's plans, the poisoning hidden as vitamins. Marcus listened without interrupting, asking only sharp, precise questions. "That's not just fraud," Marcus finally said. "That's attempted murder tied to financial crime. But proof won't come easy." "Do you have hard evidence?" "Not yet," James admitted. "But I know how to get it." Their plan was dangerous but simple. Marcus would use his maintenance clearance to set up hidden recording devices in Carter and Patterson's offices. James, who knew every schedule and routine in the building, would cover him during the quiet weekends. As they studied ventilation maps, Marcus frowned. "One thing doesn't add up. Why didn't they just fire you after that warning? A guy who saves the CEO's life should be a hero, not someone they're harassing." James had wondered the same. Why fire me right after? Better to keep me where they can watch me. To them, I'm just the lucky janitor who noticed symptoms by chance. No threat. He'd even overheard them mocking him. They called him the janitor who didn't know when to stay out of things, laughing about how he had gotten himself into something he couldn't possibly understand. Their arrogance blinded them. They had no idea just how much he did understand. The first test of the plan came on a Monday night. While James worked as usual, Marcus slipped into the ventilation ducts. In under an hour, he had installed a surveillance system so discreet that any private investigator would have needed weeks. "Done," Marcus whispered over their small communicator. "Now we wait for them to bury themselves." They didn't wait long. By Wednesday, Carter and Patterson held a private meeting, one that the microphones captured in full. "The deterioration is advancing," Patterson muttered. "But I've kept the official files clean, like we agreed." "Good," Carter replied. "How much longer?" "With the dosage hidden in her supplements, 6 months at most. If we increase it, even sooner." Carter laughed coldly. "Perfect. The press will eat it up, young. Brilliant CEO taken down by executive stress. It'll spark debates about corporate mental health. The ideal cover for a leadership transition." James listened to the recording 3 times. Each replay only hardened his resolve. Dorothy had always told him, knowing the truth, but refusing to act makes you part of the crime. It was time to act. Carter and Patterson didn't realize their own words had already sealed their fate. They had underestimated the man they thought invisible, and now the janitor they mocked was about to prove that real. Intelligence came not from degrees or titles, but from courage, persistence, and the conviction that justice was on his side. As James organized the evidence late into the night, a faint smile broke across his face for the first time in weeks. He could almost hear Dorothy's voice in his ear. She would have been proud. James wasn't just about to save a life anymore. He was about to unravel a conspiracy that would shake the corporate world. The same medical knowledge Dorothy had drilled into him for years, the kind that once healed, was now about to deliver justice in a way no court could ignore. That Wednesday would be the day arrogance finally paid its price. James arrived at work carrying something Carter and Dr. Patterson would never expect. 3 flash drives packed with 92 hours of recordings, 15 forged medical reports, and a mountain of financial evidence, compiled by one of Marcus's old military contacts, an accountant, trained in financial crime analysis. The findings were devastating. 341 suspicious transactions, each timed perfectly with Victoria's health episodes. But James's plan wasn't just to drop the evidence into the hands of authorities. He wanted Carter and Patterson to feel the humiliation of realizing they'd been outsmarted by the one man they dismissed as invisible. The first step began at Sterling Industries' monthly executive board meeting. Victoria, still pale but steady, presided at the head of the table. 15 executives surrounded her, discussing reports and projections. Carter sat at her right hand, smug, certain he was already pulling strings behind the scenes. James entered quietly with his cleaning cart, like he had countless times before. Moving from bin to bin, he slipped a sealed envelope onto Victoria's stack of papers and rolled out without anyone noticing. When she opened it, she found one typed line: "The vitamins you're taking aren't vitamins. Check the bottle." Someone who cares. Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Carter, too busy presenting numbers, didn't notice. But James, watching from the back, saw her hand drift casually to her purse, felt the ripple of alarm run across her face. She had realized something was very wrong. The second step came hours later, when Dr. Patterson arrived for his weekly consultation. He had no idea James had placed a directional microphone inside Victoria's desk lamp, or that Marcus was parked across the street recording every word. "How are your stress symptoms, Victoria?" Patterson asked with that syrupy tone James had come to despise. "You've been taking your supplements regularly?" "Religiously," Victoria replied, though suspicion edged her voice. "But I'm thinking of getting a second opinion, just to be safe." Through the hidden camera, James saw panic flash across Patterson's face. "That's unnecessary," he stammered. "Your tests show improvement. Another doctor might confuse the treatment." "Interesting," Victoria cut him off, pulling open a drawer. She placed the envelope and her bottle of supplements on the desk. "Because I received this note. It says these aren't vitamins. What would you say if I had them tested independently?" Patterson blanched. "Victoria, you can't take some anonymous message seriously. Clearly, this is sabotage. A bitter employee trying to cause problems." "Then you won't mind if I test them," she countered smoothly, her voice carrying the sharp edge of a seasoned negotiator. "Well, of course I wouldn't, but it's a waste of time." Victoria raised her hand, silencing him. "Doctor, I've been a CEO for 15 years. When someone insists I don't check something, that's exactly when I make sure I do." Meanwhile, the third step of the plan was already unfolding. As Patterson fumbled through excuses, Marcus was delivering the full package of evidence to the FBI, the SEC, the State Medical Board, and the Chicago Tribune. James had insisted that Victoria hear the truth first. She deserved to understand the scale of the betrayal before the world did. So, on Friday at 5 p.m., James knocked on her office door, a plain black briefcase in hand. "May I come in, Mrs. Sterling? There's something important you need to see." Victoria's eyes softened as she recognized him. The janitor who had saved her life twice. "Of course, James. Actually, I wanted to thank you again. And I need to know, how did you find out about the supplements?" James placed the briefcase gently on her desk. His voice was calm but heavy with purpose. "Miss Sterling, what I'm about to show you will shock you. But you need to see it before the press runs the story tomorrow morning." For the next 45 minutes, James laid everything out, piece by piece. The recordings of Carter and Patterson plotting her slow poisoning, the falsified medical reports, the detailed breakdown of stock trades timed to her failing health. He spoke with the calm precision Dorothy had once taught him at their dinner table, while Victoria sat in silence, her expression tightening from shock to disbelief, and finally to a cold, focused anger. James knew that look, it was the steel of someone used to crushing betrayal. "They thought I was just a janitor," James said quietly when he finished. "Someone lucky enough to recognize the signs of a stroke, but too uneducated to understand what was really happening. And you pieced it all together," Victoria murmured. Her eyes locked on the evidence with the same concentration she gave billion-dollar mergers. "James, you've saved my life 3 times now. Twice from my own body, and once from them." What came next surpassed even James's own plans. Victoria Sterling wasn't just a CEO. She was a strategist who had built her empire dealing with men who thought they could outmaneuver her. On Saturday morning, Carter walked into the office expecting an emergency meeting. Instead, he found Victoria waiting with FBI agents, representatives from the and an investigator from the State Medical Board. "Wilson," Victoria said with an icy calm, "I'd like you to meet some people very interested in your extracurricular activities." James, watching from the hacked security feed Marcus had tapped into, saw Carter's swagger dissolve in real time. "Victoria, what is this? Some kind of baseless accusation?" Her smile was sharp and humorless. "They're not here for accusations. They're here to make arrests based on evidence of attempted murder, financial fraud, and market manipulation." Special Agent Martinez began reading Carter his rights as he sputtered protests. Across the city, Dr. Patterson was dragged from his office in handcuffs, caught frantically trying to wipe his computer before agents seized it. The final blow landed on Monday morning. The Chicago Tribune splashed the story across its front page. "Janitor exposes plot to kill millionaire CEO." The tale of James Washington, black man whose medical knowledge saved the life of a powerful white executive, and who then brought down a conspiracy caught national attention instantly. But the most stunning moment came when Victoria herself stepped before a wall of cameras. She not only confirmed every detail, but announced James's promotion on live television. "James Washington," she said, standing tall at the podium, "has proven that competence, integrity, and intelligence aren't measured by degrees or social standing. They are measured by character, and he has character in spades." Carter and Patterson watched her words from their cells. They weren't just defeated, they were humiliated, crushed by the very man they had dismissed as invisible. Carter faced 25 years in prison. Patterson lost his license and awaited 15. James, meanwhile, became a national symbol of justice born from humility. His story proved that true intelligence wasn't about pedigree, came from heart, knowledge, and the courage to act. Dorothy would have been proud. 6 months later, James sat in a corner office on the 26th floor, his name etched into the glass, Director of Security and Corporate Integrity. The same building where he once pushed a mop now handed him a multi-million-dollar budget to fight corruption. Marcus Johnson, now promoted to Electronic Security Coordinator, walked in carrying reports. "Man, I still can't believe we're here," he said, shaking his head at the view of the city. "Remember when you used to clean these rooms?" "I remember every inch of this building," James replied with a smile, signing off on paperwork for a scholarship program Victoria had created in memory of Dorothy Washington. The invisible janitor had become the man who kept corruption in check, his knowledge and integrity shaping a legacy far bigger than he ever imagined. "The difference now," James would often say, "is that I can change things from the inside." The Dorothy Washington program had already given full medical scholarships to 120 low-income students in just 2 years, with a focus on neurology and emergency medicine. Many of these students were the children of janitors, security guards, and laborers who had never dreamed their kids could one day wear a doctor's coat. Dorothy's legacy was no longer just in James's heart, it was reshaping lives across the country. Meanwhile, the villains of the story lived their downfall. Wilson Carter sat in a federal prison in Illinois, serving his 25-year sentence. His arrogance, once useful in boardrooms, earned him nothing behind bars. His assets were seized to repay victims of his fraud, leaving him with only public legal aid, the same system he once mocked. Dr. Patterson fared little better. Stripped of his medical license and reputation, he was reduced to selling medical equipment for a fraction of his former salary. No hospital in the country would take him, not even for administrative roles. The medical community made sure he would never endanger a life again. Victoria Sterling, on the other hand, rebuilt her company stronger than ever. Sterling Industries became a national example of corporate integrity. She introduced independent medical oversight for executives, anonymous reporting channels, and strict anti-discrimination policies. Within 2 years, the company's stock tripled, proving that ethics and profitability weren't opposites, they could thrive together. One afternoon, Victoria stepped into James's office with a small smile. "I just got a call from the White House," she said. "They want you to testify before Congress about corporate medical reform." James nodded calmly. By now, national recognition was part of his life. Books had been written about him. Documentaries had been produced. Medical schools even used his story to remind students that clinical observation and integrity matter just as much as credentials. But for James, the most meaningful part came through the letters. Hundreds of ordinary workers wrote to him, sharing how his story had inspired them to trust their instincts, to speak up against injustice, and to believe that real competence has nothing to do with social position. Looking at Dorothy's framed photo on his desk, James smiled softly. "You know what she would say about all this?" he asked. Victoria leaned on the doorway, her voice steady. "She would say medicine didn't just save a life, saved the truth." James nodded, realizing how his inherited knowledge had grown into something much larger than himself. Carter and Patterson had thought they were manipulating an ignorant janitor, but what they failed to see was the strength of a man who knew exactly who he was and what he was worth. The lesson was undeniable. True intelligence isn't proven by a diploma on the wall. It's defined by knowledge, character, and the courage to act when the moment demands it. James showed the world that competence doesn't recognize race, class, or job title. It only recognizes truth. And so, whenever young workers face prejudice or injustice, they often ask themselves, what would James Washington do? The answer is always the same: observe, learn, document, and strike with the precision of someone who knows that the best revenge is the kind of success their oppressors could never imagine. If this story of knowledge, courage, and transformation touched your heart, make sure to subscribe for more stories that remind us when justice is done right, it doesn't just win, it changes the world.